You're listening to the Pixie Dust Fan Podcast. Hi, I'm Francine.
And I'm Carrie.
We're two best friends who can't stop talking, usually about Disney stuff.
Sometimes we have fascinating guests, and sometimes it's just us. But it's always positive and fun.
We're happy to have you join our chat. Thanks for listening, and let's get started. Are you missing me, pal?
We're home.
We are home from our California adventures.
Adventure it was.
It was. It was an adventure by Carrie, as we like to call it.
Yeah. And you only mentioned that whenever you wanted to point something out that was not up to par.
So sometimes I'd be like, this kind of, because Disney has their adventures by Disney. This is an adventure by Carrie. And, so it was, I would give it a 5-star. I would absolutely give it a 5-star. It was a great trip. And, it's weird. So like we were together 24/7 for like 8 days. And then I feel like I didn't talk to you for how many days.
I know, we got home, we're busy getting caught up with work.
Yeah. I swear they just save all the work while you're away until you come back. It's not like anybody does anything. They don't do anything to help you while you're gone. Like, it was all waiting for me.
Oh. I probably should have done a little bit more work when I was away so that there wasn't so much when I got back. That's my thing. But whatever.
Yeah.
It's the end of the week. We've been home.
Yeah.
The week flew by.
It flew. Like, it flew by, and yet it feels like a month ago that we were away. It's so bizarre, like the way that my brain processes time. I was going to say time travel, but anyway, we're home. So our last podcast, I have to admit and confess, I forgot to edit. And this is how busy we've been. I forgot to edit it and post it. So on Wednesday, last Wednesday, I was sitting at my desk and I was in a meeting and someone said something about, well, it's Wednesday afternoon or something. And I was like, wait a minute. Did I share the podcast yet? So then I go into the website and it's not posted. And I'm like, did I forget to publish it? So then I go in, I'm like, I didn't even edit it. I didn't even put it together. Oh my gosh.
I didn't even remember that we recorded it. So, hey.
When I messaged you and you're like, did we record it? I'm like, oh my gosh. Yes, we recorded it sitting at the side of the bed.
Right.
And we were going to do the other one on, I think, the Sunday night. But we spent way too long in Disneyland that we were not recording it when we got back to the hotel that night.
Then we get used to the time difference and, it's a little bit harder to stay up late or get up early or whatever. It was hot. We did lots of gallivanting.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I apologize for the late post of the podcast. Maybe nobody noticed. I don't know. But this one will go up on time this week. So we finished our last podcast. It was all about Oogie Boogie.
Oogie Boogie.
We were all about Oogie Boogie, which was basically pretty early in our trip. So what we didn't cover was we had Disney Plus Day there. And of course, the D23 Expo. And, of course, our last night at Disneyland, because, Well,
we had 4 park days, right? But we didn't spend a lot of time in the parks, really, because it was so hot. I wish that I could make people, like, because it sounds horrible. You go all that way to California, and then you're like, oh, it was too hot. I wasn't, we're not being babies. Like, legit, we were melting. Like melting, feels like
you almost felt
109.
nauseous. You almost felt nauseous. So Disney Plus Day was a good day though for us. We got up early and we were in the park early because we had like a bonus get in early day.
Right. So usually you can get in early because you're a resort guest, but they were letting people in early because of Disney Plus Day. So they let the resort guests get in an extra half hour on top of that.
Yes. So we actually got in the park just after 7, I think it was, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Like what we were doing up at that time in the morning on vacation.
It's easy at that point. It's piece of cake. We were up early, no
piece
problem.
of cake. So we were walking into that park just after 7, and they were holding other people back. You had to go and show your Disney Plus
and your room,
and your room
card.
thing in order to get in. And we went straight to Fantasyland.
Yeah, because it looked like they were holding people back to go over to the Haunted Mansion. So we figured we'd swoop Fantasyland. We could get over there. So when we walked in, they were giving out blue balloons. They were giving out Disney Plus buttons, and they were giving out Disney Plus Mickey ears.
There were so many balloons.
The balloons were awesome. Like, it was awesome to see a sea of blue balloons all day long.
Yeah.
But we walked straight up to the castle, and that castle was empty. So we got legit shots. Empty, nobody around at the castle, which was totally awesome.
Yep.
And then we swooped around and went into Fantasyland and did that. Like, we didn't do Peter Pan because there was already a line of Peter Pan, but we kind of swooped. We could have. It wouldn't have taken that long. But then we swooped around and did all of the Fantasyland rides, and then we carried on with our day. Like, that's pretty much the strategy if you want to do Fantasyland. Yeah, you should do Peter Pan first, and then through the rest of them.
We did have an event though. We did have a bit of an event in Fantasyland.
We did, which was awesome.
It was pretty awesome. I always joke about how I never get evacuated from any rides. Like in all my years going to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, never get evacuated. Now watch me jinx myself and I'll get evacuated from something stupid. But we got evacuated. So the ride broke down while we were in the middle of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Like my favorite ride. And it broke down. And then, so my issue is always if we break down and then we're stuck in the ride for like hours. Like that's a panic attack waiting to happen for me. But it was just minutes when it broke down and then all the lights came on. And we were like, oh, we were so excited. Like all the lights were on. But then when they said they were coming to get us out. And then it was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So we were just at the part right before you enter.
HE double hockey sticks.
That's it.
When we're going to get crushed by the train.
Yes.
So closer to the end of the ride. But the ride is only a 2-minute ride anyway. So
yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then they came and they opened the lap bar or whatever. And they had like 3 other cars that they let out. And we were all walking. But like, other big fear. So one of the cars was like almost in the doorway. I want to say quote unquote, like the doorway into the next room, the HE double hockey sticks room. And it was in the doorway, which meant you had to kind of scoot around it. So the cast member goes up, she turns sideways and she slides between the car and the wall. And then she's like, okay, come on. And I'm like, oh, I can't get through there. Like, there's no way I'm getting in that little space. So then I'm like mortified. Like I'm standing there like, oh my gosh, I'm too fat. What are we going to do? But then then we saw the other side had like a little bit more room. So I managed to like force myself. It was like, stuffing a like marshmallow through stuff popped through the side. But then I felt better because there were 3 men behind us and 2 of them got through, but the third guy was like, no way, man.
Yeah, he had to climb it. He climbed over the vehicle to get through like the back of the Toad ride and over the seats to get through because there was no way he was getting through.
I was wondering, I'm standing there thinking, what's going to happen? Like, if I can't fit through this thing.
We're going to be stuck there forever.
Right?
I would have stayed there with you.
You would have stayed with me. Thank you. Until I was, hungry enough that maybe I lost a few pounds.
And I'd have to go out and get a corn dog and come back.
Oh my gosh. But that was fun. It was great to be evacuated. And I guess they just reset the ride and it continued. But, so we carried on our day and we managed to get over to do Haunted Mansion Holiday.
Mm-hmm. Such a fun one.
So in Disneyland, for those that don't know, they overlay the Haunted Mansion with The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's Jack Skellington and I can't remember her name. I've seen
Sally,
the movie.
Oogie Boogie.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah, so it's all of them. And they basically redo the Haunted Mansion with those characters.
It's impressive.
It's very impressive. So we managed to get that done. That was exciting. And then, we had a pretty full day, I want to say.
Yeah,
we took a break in the middle.
Yeah, we by lunchtime it was getting really, really
It was 110.
hot. And then we went back to the resort and we met Marla.
Yes. So one of our listeners, Marla, met up with us at the Disneyland Resort because we decided to meet in air conditioning. And we had a great visit with Marla.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was so fun. And Marla brought us some chocolates and candy. And I have to admit, so at the resort, I opened the candies the chocolates that night. But
so did I.
Yeah, and I had some left. I thought I was being good. I had some left. I brought them home. I ate the rest of them the first night I was home. They were good. So thanks, Marla. But it was great getting to meet her in person because we've chatted online, but we've never actually met in person. So that was fun.
Really cool.
That was cool. And yeah, she was awesome. And then we realized that we had to go pick up our
credentials for
the expo.
Well, part of it too, I was like, so when we got back and we were hanging out with Marla, we sat and chatted with her for quite a while. Yeah. And then we went upstairs to the room and I had a bit of a headache.
Oh,
so yes. I had a nap, remember? I was trying to have a nap. I might have had a smidge of a nap.
You had a nap. You had a nap.
So I don't know how long I napped for though, but I had a nap.
It was a little while. I ate chocolate, you napped.
Okay. So I had a nap and I knew we had to go get that, but I just needed to when you have to have a nap just to kind of straighten yourself out. So when we woke up, we were messaging with Jamie and Leslie,
friends,
because we're supposed to meet them for dinner soon, and we didn't
know the time.
We technically didn't know the exact time
for dinner.
And by the time I got up from my nap and we got the message from them, we had barely an hour to meet them for dinner. So we had to get from the Disneyland Hotel over to the convention center and back. And I wanted to get the credentials that day just so it was out of the way. We could have gotten them in the morning, but as we saw with the next couple of mornings, it still took 45 minutes to get into the building in the morning if you didn't go early. Even the people in the basement, it took a long time for them to get into the building, get into the show floor and all that stuff. So we did lift over, grab our stuff. We ran into another friend.
We did. We ran into Elantris as we were walking in to get our credentials.
And that's Diz through Brown Eyes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people on Instagram. And
we were fangirling.
She was like, "You ladies," and we're like, "Oh my goodness!"
She recognized us.
Why, hello there. So we were chatting with her and chatting, and then we're like, "Oh snap, we got to get going!" We are truly running out of time to get over to Disneyland for dinner. So
that's a good tip, though. That's a good tip for people that are going to the expo to go and get your credentials the day before. Because honestly, it did look like quite a pain to get it the Saturday morning or the Friday or Saturday or Sunday morning.
Well, and because we live in Canada, they don't mail them to us. So everybody else had their credentials because they mailed them to everybody in the United States. So we had to go pick it up because they won't email.
Yes.
The plasticky, papery credentials to us.
Plasticky, papery?
Because I guess they have something in them. The QR code thingy or or something. We did tap it in places, so maybe it's the magic band's a reason why they can't.
Maybe. But it was good that she called us over. She was there for her press event.
Yes, she had the press event that evening.
Yes, but it was so great catching up with her. And then we ran back to Disneyland. Well, we didn't run. Okay, who are we kidding? We lifted back to downtown Disney, ran through there, didn't run, walked, and got to, because they were already at the restaurant. They'd already checked in. So what was the name of the restaurant? It was where the mint juleps are.
It's a mint julep restaurant.
Yeah, it's the mint julep restaurant. And, but even the mint juleps weren't that refreshing, Carrie. Because the ice barely, like the ice was not even solid anymore. Like everything just melted. It was so hot. It was so hot. Mind you, the food was good. I had a steak. It was pretty good.
But you're correct. The mint juleps weren't as refreshing or as delightful as usual because they weren't as cold.
Yeah. But so we did that. And then we toured around with Leslie. So our friends Leslie and Jamie were there, and Jamie's husband and her beautiful baby girl. So we got to have dinner with them. It was so much fun. And then we hung out with Leslie for a little while after dinner. And the next day was D23 Expo. Mm-hmm. And Carrie did not line up at 2:00 in the morning. Not one day.
I know, it was awesome. Definitely did it a little bit different. And I think having the RFQs for the panels,
yes,
was like, I don't think it's perfect by far, but I think like every year it gets a little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
We, between the four of us, we did manage to get a few things, and those few things meant that we didn't have to, wait in line too long. Like we waited in line an hour or two before to try to get to the front of certain lines, but we didn't have to wait at 3:00 in the morning in hopes that we actually get in.
Right.
Which is sort of the scenario that Leslie and Jamie had to deal with so we got panel. Into the, we had access to the Pixar and Disney animation and Disney panel, and we had the parks panel, but you and I didn't go to the parks panel. Jamie
we
and Leslie
skipped
went
it.
in the park panel. But the Marvel one and the live action one, we didn't even none of the four of us got it. Got an RF whatever for that. We were whatever, and you and I didn't want to do it, but those two. It's like the reason why they went to the expo,
the Holy Grail,
was to go to that session. So they were up early in line outside as early as they could be to get in line and get in the queue for the standby line because they didn't have a pass. Mm-hmm. And really, I'm pretty sure they told us that the only reason they got in was because they met someone in line. Was talking to someone in line. They had a pass plus a guest to get into it, and then they realized that they wanted to go and try to get one of the dolls that was released or get something that was released, so they decided they weren't going to the session, and they went to the front of the line and checked in Jamie and Leslie with the pass so that they had wristbands to be in the session, because I'm pretty sure Jamie said that she thought that if that didn't happen, with the scenario that they were in that morning, they wouldn't have got in.
They wouldn't have. Yeah, she said that. She said they got to the convention center before 3 a.m. and there were already something like 100 people in line. Like they were already too far back. And based on that, even the standby, they didn't let in 100 people in the standby. So if it hadn't been for that girl they met in line, they wouldn't have got in.
Yeah. So and it's so popular. People weren't missing that session. Whereas something like the parks, like I'm sure there's people that miss the park session, or people that ask, like I'm sure everybody asked for a +1, whether or not they had one too, right? So
that was very nice of that girl. Like what a fluke. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, they got into that panel. So they were up before 3:00 in the morning. The panel started at 10. And that day we also had the Muppets panel. So at the time, and if you know me, you know that, my favorite actor is Harrison Ford. So at the time that Harrison Ford was walking out onto the stage in that panel, I was sitting on the ground waiting for the Muppets. So Jamie and Leslie were messaging me going, "Oh my God, Franny's boyfriend's here." And oh my gosh, he looked fabulous. He had a tear in his eye. He was all like emotional, talking about the new Indiana Jones movie and how it's the last one. And like, he was just, so anyway, the good news is I was in the same building.
Right, and really, we most likely wouldn't have gotten anyways.
We would never have gotten
would have waited all morning to not get in, then you'd be sobbing in the Muppets line.
Exactly. We needed to keep the Muppets line pure and happy. And I had like the best Instagram video ever. I feel like I need to figure out how to like post that in the show. You can't do it in the show notes, but I feel like I got to post it somewhere. So we made sure of all the things that we were going to be pretty close to the front of the line for the Muppets.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. We were like right up there. We were in the first like section of people waiting in line for the Muppets.
Weren't the VIPs.
Right. Exactly. And there we were. And when they marched us into that room, I got to tell you guys, Carrie was like a kid whose Christmases had all come true.
Well, that, of course.
But I don't think I've ever seen you with such joy on your face as when those guys came out. So tell everybody a little bit about the panel, because I don't think everybody knows what the panels do.
So
right?
the panel was the 30th anniversary of the Muppets Christmas Carol. So they started out with just having the Muppets behind like a little wall there, and they were, laughing and whatever, which is what I would expect that they were going to do. And
you were happy with that.
I was happy with that.
You were happy with that.
I just love being in the room with like those Muppets. But then they brought out the panel. So it was like Paul Williams, who wrote the music for the movie and wrote the Rainbow Connection. Polly Smith, she was a lady that designed the costumes, and it was like apparently her first real like gig, like being in control of like the costumes for an entire movie. So that was interesting, her telling us her story about that and how little time she had to try to do what she needed to do for that movie. Brian Henson, who was a director, Dave Goles, who's Gonzo, and that was the panel. So they talked about their experiences and whatever, which was awesome, hearing their stories. Then they started talking about how they're bringing back a new version of it to video, and they're bringing a song that was cut. So it's a song called When Love Is Gone. And like they were telling stories about how it was lost for so long and whatever, and they were trying to find it. And so they're putting it out on a new release, I guess the 30th anniversary version, I would guess. But they brought out Jodie Benson to sing the song, which was pretty cool because she sang it beautifully, and she's Jodie Benson.
Little Mermaid, original awesome. Little Mermaid.
And then at the very end, which took me totally off guard.
So at that point, you were still like on a high. Awesome. Jodie Benson singing, oh my gosh, so great.
And like hearing all the stories, and like, they were going on and on, probably longer than they should have went on, with their stories. And it's kind of neat to hear, to see them act that way and be real and talk and say what they want to say or whatever. But at the very end, which I knew that they were going to come back, because you see like Dave Goles is like getting up and he's getting ready, and like they're waving and he's gone off the stage. So I'm like, oh yeah, those Muppets are coming back, because he's got to go back and get Gonzo. But they came to the front. They came to the very, very front of the stage, like very, very front, like the aisleway, and they performed "It Feels Like Christmas." Like we're talking the cast, the Muppet cast, the Penguins. Everything was out there, and I died. Like I just was crying. I had the best time ever. It's like seeing them perform it and seeing them there and being so close. Like heck, if I would have been in the back row, I would have been crying too. Just like there's no whatever. But it was wonderful. It was like the best ever. Like every single penny you paid for that trip and I paid for that trip was worth it in that 1 hour or whatever. Heck, in that last 10 minutes. Yes. But we'll say the whole session, every penny that we invested into that trip, in my opinion, was worth it for just that experience. And that's how I felt when I went a few years ago. Same thing early in the morning. I was in a line by myself in the basement. I was the only one going up to the Muppets panel. I was way in the back, and they had all the Muppets, and they were actually bringing people up and letting them do the Muppet things, like put their, like to play with the Muppets. And I was in the back of the room watching it, like on the big screen, taking pictures. And at that moment was like this moment right here. Whatever, that was the very first thing on the very first day. And I was like, whatever happens after this doesn't even matter, because everything was worth this one for this first 1 hour I spent. Moment. So the same scenario, but this was way, way better. Like, honest to goodness.
When we say they performed it was not behind a wall. So you actually got to, like,
you could see the Muppets, the actual Muppets, and they were performing, but then you could see the performers, the puppeteers, or Muppeteers, or whatever they're called. Yeah. You could actually see them. And it was fascinating to watch them do it,
like
because it's like they were acting, like they were moving the Muppets, but their faces were actually acting the parts. Like there were two actors doing Gonzo. Awesome. Like it was awesome. It was awesome.
That's the best part of, like, if they would have been behind the wall, then it wouldn't have been the same. But it's the fact that you're really seeing when you see it that way. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Like. Yeah, like I've seen that. Yeah, that's what does it for me.
It was amazing. So that panel, in my mind, was worth sitting on the floor and waiting. It wasn't that
long. We only waited like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
You know, but people listen to this. She's saying only an hour and a half, 2 hours. Do you know what happens to a woman my age when she gets down on the floor and has to sit there for an hour and a half? Let's just say all of my legs went to sleep. Yeah. So anyway, it was an hour and a half or 2 hours, but it was worth it.
So that day that was the only session. We didn't do lots of sessions. That was the only
sessions we did were the Muppets. We did the Pixar and Disney panel, which was kind of fun. Like I waited on the ground in the basement for that one too. Although at least down there it was a little cooler. So I did that. We had lunch on the floor.
We did the Muppet Mayhem's interview, but that wasn't really a panel. That was just more of a... You had found in the agenda that their Muppets were coming back, and I wasn't even in tune with that.
You were, so I made you guys sit on the floor. Aren't you glad? Yeah. So we went back, watched the Muppets. It was fantastic. So they have the panels going on in different like stadium rooms, and depending on how big the panel is or how small it is. But basically there's like a whole showroom kind of floor that has vendors and exhibits and all sorts of things. And that's where we saw the Muppets Mayhem. So
yeah, that was at the Disney Bundle booth. So they had like a big booth that was about Disney Plus, the Disney Bundle, the Hulu, the whatever. So, and at all of those booths, like all day long, they have programming there. They had, we were at the booth that had, I'm trying to think of what that booth was. It was maybe it was Hulu. It was ABC because it had all the different shows that were on television. Fishing? When we went fishing, when we did the pictures fishing, we did the Kardashian videos. Like they had all of these only murders in the building. Like they had all these stations where you could go and take pictures and stuff. So like they had way more photo opportunities than they've ever had in other years. Mm. But they also have like at all of the Disney Bundle area or the Marvel, they have a humongous Marvel booth and a big Star Wars booth and whatever. Like they have stuff going on all day long, like little intimate things where you sit on the ground or whatever, stand around and watch, and they'll talk about like they'll bring out an artist or they'll bring out a director or they'll bring out a writer or they'll bring out somebody to do with whatever they're talking about for that half an hour. And they explain things, they answer questions, and then usually they give out buttons or they give out pins or they give out postcards or they give out little pieces of art. They have all kinds of stuff going on all the time, which is almost impossible to stay in tune with what the heck is
We walked
happening.
Past that one booth and you were like, is that Darren Criss singing?
Yeah, Darren Criss was playing on a piano and singing.
From Glee was playing and just singing, and there were a bunch of people around them. Like, and then there was another time we were standing near some stage where they had a couple of people being interviewed from Big Shots, and then all of a sudden John Stamos walked out.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that that's happening. It's like I found the app this year a little bit better, I think, to help find some of that stuff. But it's like when you try to explain to people, like you focus on the big things and figuring out the big things you want to do. You have all the shopping, you have all the looking around, you have all the booths to like try to explore the best you can. They have what do they call the area where you can get autographs? Like they have a whole area at the back where you can wait in line.
The talent
central
area
to meet people. There's so much stuff. Like it's almost impossible.
It's overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming if you're not really sure where you're going or what you're doing.
And I find too, like for us, like the way that we're in tune with our Disney fandom is probably a little different than some of the people that are there, right? Like a few things. Like I find like when it comes to things that I want to buy. Like, I know about the pins. Like, I knew about the pins that were coming out, but I didn't know about the Funkos or the Hallmarks or the this or that or whatever. Like, you know, we had to go get a Hallmark thing for our friend, but he told us what it was and where we needed to go. But, like, you really would know what's really important to you. Like, me knowing about the pins, but there was Funko, there was Loungefly, there were so many different vendors that if you were a serious fan of all of them, then you'd kind of be in the loop. Like, if you loved Darren Criss and you were the Darren Criss fan club member, you would have known that he was going to be there.
Absolutely.
And I think so I think a lot of knowing what to do, like they had the Mickey Mouse Club from the late 80s and 90s there. So, you know, if you were a fan of that, then you would have made sure you were in the right places at the right time. But I find for us, like when we were in the panel for the animation and the Disney and the Pixar, like we know like the big actors and we know the big things, but like when they bring out all these other people that are in other shows and things, like everyone's screaming and yelling and we don't really know who a lot of these people are. You and I are
sitting there like shrugging our shoulders going,
right?
Okay.
And then even with the stuff that's on the floor, right? Like they have lots of Disney Channel and again, the Mickey Mouse Club stuff. Like I knew the Mickey Mouse Club from the late 80s, but like a lot of the things that were there, like the Disney Plus TV shows that are popular and the original things, like you like Big Shots, so you you like that, but we don't know a lot of that stuff. So we kind of were like, what the heck's going on there?
It depended on your age. Like there were so many things where we were like, huh, what's this? But then what was the guy's name? Leonard Maltin? Remember the guy that used to do the movie reviews?
Yeah, we walked past Leonard Maltin. We're like, hey, that's Leonard Maltin.
That's Leonard.
People probably didn't know who he was.
There wasn't even a lineup to see him because most of the people there didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
And I are like, oh my gosh, look, it's Leonard Maltin.
And I think there's definitely like a way, like if you like Imagineering and you like history, then like there will be people there that you can go and meet and get autographs or if they have books or things.
Were pretty big that, like, Carrie, we got our pictures taken with the man himself.
Bob Gurr.
He
signed we got him to sign our credentials, which was pretty cool. I really like that.
Me too. So, like, we were walking by, there's Bob Gurr sitting in a booth. Like, we've had him on the podcast, like, but of course, like, you know, it's whatever. It's still where we're like, oh my gosh, getting to see him in person. So
get a picture with him.
And get a picture with him, which was fantastic. But we also had another sighting that was completely accidental. That was, and shockingly, there weren't many people that realized the greatness that they were in the presence of.
Yeah. Tony Baxter. That's what you're talking about.
It was nuts. Yes.
We were getting dropped off. So every day for the expo, we went over at like 9:00-ish because we weren't waiting for anything in the basement. We knew we had to wait for the Muppets. We just wanted to explore, see what was going on there. So we were driving. Our Uber had to kind of do a UE to kind of drop us off sometimes and whatever. And I don't remember if that was a time when we had to do a U, but whatever. We were getting dropped off, and when we drove by, we saw Tony Baxter walking down the sidewalk, and we were like, oh my goodness, I think that's Tony Baxter. And he was farther down, so he wasn't at the line, and we were like, oh my goodness, like if our guy does like whatever he needs to do, like maybe we'll get up close. And we were getting out of the car and we were trying to walk quick, but he was already in line like 20 people ahead of us. Like, we were so close to being in the queue.
Tell people who Tony is, though. Tell people who Tony is, just in case.
Some people may not know. He's an Imagineer.
Right. He's like big time Disney Imagineer, responsible for all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, go on.
And we were hoping we would get close to him, but we didn't. So we were like 20 people away, and we were like, that's Tony Baxter. Like, can you imagine if he probably would have a straight restraining order on us if we actually were lined up before or after him, because we'd have been like, hi, Mr. Baxter. Hi, Mr. Baxter. Hi. And we were hoping, because he's a VIP, like he wasn't that far ahead of us, but when he went through security, he had his like, because he's a legend, he had his like Disney legend card that he could show up to get him into the expo,
but
and we had to go into the basement
with us. Like, he stood in line. He's got to go with everybody. Security. Oh, but come on! You don't think Harrison Ford wasn't standing out in that line? I can tell you that much.
I'm sure he doesn't. Yeah,
he walked up to that convention center just like the rest of us. Got in line, stood in line for it was probably a good half-hour line to get to security, because we took a bunch of pictures, like paparazzi shots of him from a ways away. And he waited in line just like us.
I'm sure Terri Hardin had to wait in line too, unfortunately.
I know, and I'm really upset that Terri Hardin did not have a booth there and was not like
properly represented. So Terri Hardin,
we should have tried a little bit better to find her on the Friday.
I know, I
there.
can't believe. But by the time we saw her post, and it didn't work out. But Terri Hardin's been on the podcast as well. I'll put the link in the show notes. She's an amazing, incredible Imagineer, very passionate, and she's a lot of fun. So we got to there were a few little sightings that we weren't expecting.
Right. But I found, so before we have to talk about a little bit about the parks panel stuff, I would expect, because that's sort of news. But I found that because
so we decided to skip that. We didn't go to that because of
the RSPs and getting the spots on the sessions, and because we should talk a little bit about the virtual queues for the stores. So
I have that on my notes. Is we need to talk about
the virtual queues for the Mickey's of Glendale pin store was a gong show. Complete. It was a disaster. There was 4 of us. We had 2 times a day. The app wouldn't work when we clicked on the Mickey's of Glendale pin store because every single person wants it because they sell a line of pins. There's only 200 or 300 of each pin. Everybody wants them. That's the store that everybody would wait in line all night long to be first in line to buy everything to sell it on eBay. So we could not get into that store. We tried the last day. They let us go by in the standby line after 2:00 and there was no pins that I wanted left.
There was nothing left.
So that was a total gong show. But the other lines and the other virtual queues, so there was a Mickey's of Glendale store, there was a Expo logo store, there was a Expo store. There was a handful of stores, and we got into all the stores we wanted on the very first day using that virtual queue, which is in the past, it would take all 3 days to get into the stores that you want. And I haven't been in that pin store since the very first year. So I never get into the pin store.
It still bugs me. I know that Carrie's saying, now the virtual queues are better, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. And you're right. I'm happy I didn't have to line up for 3 hours to get into the store. But I'm mad that I spent all that money to go to this event, and there was a store that I couldn't, they wouldn't let me in to spend my money. And that I know there were people that got into that store probably multiple times so they could buy those pins and sell them on eBay. And that irritates me.
But that irritates me. We would have waited. We would have, if you wanted to get into those stores in the past, you had to decide, it was, I said, I really don't think I've been into been able to access pins since the very first year I went to the expo.
And that's a shame.
I would just say, I wouldn't even try because I couldn't make it a priority because I didn't want to spend the whole day. I didn't want to sleep in the basement and spend the whole day to try to get pins. So
and that's a shame.
But also without the virtual queue, we would have to decide on that first day, do we want to wait early in the morning to try to get in the line for the Mickey's of Glendale store? Do we want to wait till the end of the second day when it's a lot easier to get in when maybe nothing's left? That's what it was like before.
I wish Disney could figure out a way to stop this kind of behavior. And it's not just with this pin store. It's with, limited releases they do in the parks and things like that. You have our badge, our annual pass, when we get into the parks, who we are. So you need to figure out a way to prevent people from doing that. So that it's fair for everybody. That's my soapbox. That's my soapbox. I'll get off.
For sure. And I would be interested to hear, from the perspective of those people that do have, that do usually have, hotel rooms full of merchandise after the first day. How was it for them? Did they, because I would think, I'm sure people would have lots of friends and that you just need to get in the virtual queue. So if you don't get in, then your friend, you go in with them as their +1. So I'm sure they did have some access, but I wonder if it was a little bit different. That's saying, if you got in, you would buy if you were lucky enough to get in early in the earlier queue, earlier in the day, you would have just, depending on how many things they let you buy, you would just buy what you would have usually bought. It was more getting a spot.
Yeah.
In that queue. And every day they release different pins. So if you would want to go in, if you were trying to get pins to resale or you wanted them all, you would have to get in that virtual queue every morning to try to get a spot.
And we tried every morning.
6 a.m.
At 1 o'clock.
And
it was so
busy
that
afternoon.
the app wouldn't even work. Like, that's how many people wanted into that store.
So that was our big disappointment, I think, from all the things that we wanted to do. The pin store was the disappointment.
Yeah.
Everything else went really well. And I think, aside, I think we enjoyed it. I think there were lots of things to do. I think, make no mistake, we did our damage in the stores. Like, we got into Mickey's of Glendale, we got into the other store, and yeah, I think between the two of us, within, was it 45 minutes we were in the store?
We
spent almost $500 between the two of us.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the Mickey's of Glendale store, like, really wasn't.
We went bananas.
Like, it wasn't really the greatest because they had, they still had Muppet Haunted Mansion stuff, and they had a few. They had more Muppet
November.
stuff.
Yeah.
But they had all kinds of 70th anniversary Walt Disney Imagineering, which was really cool. So
yeah. So we did a little
Muppet
bit
stuff.
Carrie bought Muppet stuff. We did a little bit of damage there. But there was one other thing that we saw at the expo that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That it really was the only. Well, I kept saying to you, I don't care if I get to any panel. I just want to see this. And it was
Walt's plane.
We got
really
to stand
cool.
in front of the plane, get our picture taken with the plane, see some of the stuff, artifacts from inside the plane, pictures from inside.
They did a really good job.
Yeah.
Amazon that sponsored that exhibit.
Amazon, which I also have a beef with because we never got in their store either because the line was way too long. But yeah, they did a really good display of things from inside that plane, and pictures and stuff, getting to see Walt. Like, there's pictures of Walt all over the internet, and we all see the same pictures, but seeing some of these, I don't feel like I've seen them before. And it was kind of fun to see him on the plane with his family. And yeah, so that was pretty cool.
And it being sponsored by Amazon was just outside. Like, so they had an auditorium with the plane in it where we could get our picture, and they had the little exhibit. But with Amazon sponsoring it, they've created a bunch of like retro merch to go with this exhibit. So, but an expo, like, it can't just be that, like, you walk out and you walk into a gift shop, like at Walt Disney World. So if you wanted to go into the Amazon booth, they actually, at the front part of their booth, had some sort of a game. So we couldn't even get close enough to see it. But from what we understand from someone we were talking to at the hotel later, they were doing some sort of a game, and then you won something. So she was saying, like, they were giving out games and toys and whatever. So there's a humongous long line of people in the first part of their booth playing this game to win something. And then once you're through that part, then they had kind of a showcase of all the stuff that they've made. Posters, postcards, shirts,
T-shirts,
bags, all kinds of neat stuff that goes in line with commemorating the plane. So a whole retro line. And you couldn't buy it, but they had QR codes with each of the things. So I'm assuming we're going to scan it and be able to buy it on Amazon. But we couldn't get close. We couldn't get into that second part of the booth to see the stuff. So we were like looking,
peering over the walls like kids on Christmas at the window,
like trying to see the stuff. T-shirts, whatever. Like, they had a little showroom of all this merch, but we couldn't get to it because the first part of the booth was the game, and you had to go through the game to kind of get into the showroom of the other part of the booth. That, in a nutshell, is what a crazy booth at the expo is like. The Disney Movie Rewards, same thing. They had they were giving away like codes and taking pictures of you, and they had people snake through the booth. And then from what I understand, like, when you get home from the expo and you look on social media, like, there's a whole lot of, So what they were doing as you were going through the Disney Movie Club, I would expect getting points and things, because you can get points with Disney Movie Rewards. That they were taking pictures of people, and then they were taking the little tiny, like, 1 inch by 1 inch square photos and making a mural.
Cool.
They were stickers, and they were making a mural.
See,
but, like,
there's
again,
so much
to
you
get to that point, we had to wait through, like, the lines where they were doing games and whatever, to get to that point where they would take your picture and put it on the mural. So, like, those are two examples of really intensely involved booths where people line up like crazy. They had a Target booth where, like, the line was crazy, and it looked like a diner. And you went in and they gave you like a gumball machine and you got like a little target animal or something from the gumball machine. When the gumball machine was empty, there was nobody in line. But like people wait ever to get like a little trinket, to get a sticker, to get a postcard, to get whatever. So lots of the booths were like that, where they were given some, like they always are given something away, I suppose.
Yeah.
But very involved, where they were very, very, very popular. Sort of like last time they had the Scrooge McDuck.
The money one.
Where you could dive into the money pit, and that people were lined up from morning to night to like get a picture of them diving into that pit. So that was a little crazy. They didn't have anything like that, but they had more.
We saw Walt's statue too, right? Like there was a line just to get in to see that, but that was fantastic. Getting to see the actual statue that's coming to Epcot.
That was the booth, the parks booth. So they have a humongous parks booth where they show you what's happening in each of the parks. Very spacious, because lots of people go in. Everybody wants pictures with the new Moana sculpture, with the Walt sculpture. So it's more spread out, but that you get to see what's happening in the parks. And they did a really good the Disney 100 exhibit. So that exhibit's coming next year, and it's going to be a touring exhibit, I think.
Yeah.
So we got, that's Walt Disney Imagineering. Every expo does a big exhibit. So that was the exhibit. So they showed like through the decades, different parts of the Walt Disney Company, which was really
pretty
neat.
Cool.
Yeah. The Mary Poppins and the Disneyland section.
I feel like we've covered the expo, but yet there's still like, I don't know that we've captured the essence of the expo.
No, I think it's impossible.
It's impossible because there's just so much going on and so much different stuff. We skipped the panel for the parks because there was no point. They were live streaming it anyway. So Carrie was watching it on her phone while we were walking the floor, enjoying the fact that it wasn't so busy. Mm-hmm. So we could listen to the announcements, and we will do a podcast where we talk about some of those announcements. And believe me, nothing's happening anytime soon. So we can talk about our thoughts on some of those announcements.
It can wait till next week. We can wait.
I mean, we've already been recording long enough today that we don't need to talk about those, but we will cover them. But on the Sunday, so we did all that. It was great. We had a fantastic day, and then it was our last night. Mm-hmm. So of course we had to go back to Disneyland.
Yeah, we always have to go back and say goodnight to Walt.
And because of the heat wave that was going on the entire time we were there, it was time for it to break. Mm-hmm. So there was a rainstorm.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It rained. It rained a couple of the expo days, but it didn't break the heat. So
no, I think it was the last day that the heat was starting to break, was basically because we were going home. So that was kind of how the timing goes.
The weather that night wasn't that bad, but it was raining, but I don't think it really rained exactly on Disney property. It was maybe spitting a little bit. But we got a most wonderful surprise when we were sitting in Tomorrowland, which
we sat in Tomorrowland to get a Darth Vader treat.
What was it called?
It was called
Darth by Chocolate or something.
Yeah, Darth by Chocolate, and we were sitting there in Tomorrowland, and it was the most beautiful sight.
A rainbow.
Yeah, but not just a rainbow. Like it was one of the clearest rainbows I've ever seen. Like so defined. Rainbow. It was a full rainbow, but it was so defined.
And it doesn't rain. Like, I'm sure there's rainbows like on like by the ocean and whatever. Yes. I would assume there are rainbows there, but like if rainbows come when it rains, and it never rains there. So everybody was like looking up in the sky, taking pictures. When I was waiting for the chocolate, waiting in line for that, and I first saw the rainbow, like I said to the guy that's like a local in line, I'm like, look at that rainbow. I'm like, you guys don't get rainbows very often. And he's like, no, we don't. And he's like nudging the people he's with. He's like, look at the rainbow. Like there's a bunch of people standing in the Tomorrowland food court looking up to the sky, taking pictures and videos of a most beautiful rainbow.
It was like we'd seen a unicorn. Like it definitely... Like that was a day, that was pixie dust for all those people there, because you could see everybody stopped and looked up to take pictures. There were people trying to get selfies with it in behind them. It was incredible. And it was such a great rainbow.
And then
So after Carrie spilled so after Carrie spilled the whole glass of water on me.
But he didn't, that's it.
But whatever, it was hot, so it didn't matter.
But it didn't really get you wet. It was like the perfect, like, it just missed, right? Like, I didn't, like, you didn't have wet pants. A little bit.
No, I didn't have wet pants, just a knee. But,
just a knee.
Yeah, so then we sat down and we were enjoying this lovely dessert together. And then there was like an announcement nearby.
The Tomorrowland dance party. And I'm like, great, that's just what we need.
Carrie literally rolled her eyes like, dance party. Until they said, and we welcome
the Cheshire Cat. I was so excited. I was Carrie's like,
bye. She just left me sitting there and off she went, and she was gone forever.
Because I had to watch the dance party. So they had Cheshire Cat. I've never seen a Cheshire Cat in person when I've been at a park. I don't think so. If I have, seriously? I don't remember. I don't think he's regular. So when we saw him on the back of the Oogie Boogie float, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Right. And that was like amazing.
I knew he was doing time at Disneyland because I had seen it on Instagram. So I knew that he was hanging out at Disneyland all of a sudden. So I thought that was on my bucket list. I'm like, I got to try to see this Cheshire Cat somewhere. And when we saw him at the end of the Oogie Boogie parade on the end of the float, I was like, there we go. I saw him. Done. Didn't even think about it.
Didn't think you'd get to see him again, did you? He
came out to the party, to the dance party, shaking his little tail, dancing around, doing line dances, whatever. I was out there taking videos, photos. Like, I wasn't leaving till he was done. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't expect to see him there. It was the best ever. But between the rainbow and that, I was like, this is the best night at Disneyland ever.
Carrie's like, this is the best day ever.
Like, it's the best, like, really, because of the heat, like, we didn't spend a lot of time in the park. And you may say, oh, we spend enough time in the park. But you have to think about how we regularly, like, if we were at Disneyland and that weather would have been normal, this is why we stay at Disneyland hotels, but we don't spend any time at the Disneyland hotels because we're so close to the parks. We walk to the parks, we do stuff in the morning. And then we'll just sit around because at Disneyland there's a million benches. There's lots of treats. There's lots of people walking. There's like the band that goes by. Like, we'll just sit and do nothing and just chill out or walk around, take a few pictures, and we will just stay there. Find a rocking chair. Do it. Like, we will just be there. Right. And that's what we do every single day. And then we go, oh, we don't really spend much time at our resort because we just sit around Disneyland or DCA all day long. It was so hot.
We could
not do that.
Like, we couldn't pick a bench and just sit on a bench.
We tried to sit in the shade. Even when we ate our lunch.
It didn't matter.
When we ate our lunch and we thought, well, we'll just sit here for a while. Like, we couldn't. We sat around for a little bit and then we're like, we have to leave. Like, we spent a lot of time.
The ground was like a frying pan radiating heat up. It was just
really hot.
Yeah, it was hot.
So I was feeling like we didn't spend as much time and that's what I love doing at Disneyland. And I love doing that at Walt Disney World too, really. That's what we do in both spots.
Yeah, I was going to say we do it in both spots.
We just hang out and chill out, and that's what I love doing when I'm there. And so at the end of the trip, I was like, we really didn't spend it. And I was joking with you about how we're going to have to do a do-over. And you're like, not in this heat. Like, you're like, I need some time to forget about this heat.
Don't talk to me about it right now. Because right now, I'm never coming back. I'm never coming back.
We need to come back. And then... But then when we went to Disneyland that night and
it was
those
everything.
Two things happened. And then we stayed for the fireworks. We found, we went and sat in the front row at the train station so that we could get a pretty decent view of their amazing fireworks. And we watched the fireworks and we went back to the room. It was perfect.
It was a perfect night.
Made up for the time missed.
There you go. It was a great trip. It was a really good trip. And then we got up extra early the next morning and flew home. Early. That was quite the day. I was telling somebody at work, they're like, how's the jet lag, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, normally I don't experience that. But that day was so long, like, because normally I would come home and just go to bed. But I had so much going on that day that I was up way too late. And then it messed up my whole week. But anyway, we got home. It was fun. It was a blast. And, I'm already starting to forget about how hot it was.
Thank heavens. It wasn't supposed to be that hot. It should have been there should have been a chill at night you should have been going,
oh my gosh.
Oh, I like that hoodie over there.
I honestly was looking at people, like, there were people in jeans. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. Anyway, so that was our trip. That was the expo. We've shared, I think, what we needed to with everyone. Hopefully.
Well, yeah, it is fun.
No.
whatever.
It is what it is. We shared our kooky stories.
Yep, but it was fun. And, you know, you see all sorts of stuff, and we have some great pictures and some good memories.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We had lots of fun and lots of laughs and lots of funny pictures. Like,
oh, yeah. The porg that we saw that was in line behind us. Like, you don't know. Like, you could be standing in line, and there's a porg on one side and Cinderella on the other. Like, it's some of the costumes. Like, it was just, it was fun. It was fun. Okay. Carrie, we've synopsized, or we've summarized our expo, our Disneyland trip. We're home, and it's time.
Yeah.
What is your pixie dust?
Well, I was struggling with my pixie dust because I've been just busy all week long and like just working and not really going anywhere, doing anything. And then I remembered I had an email from one of my friends, and she had said that she was excited because you had read her review on the podcast.
She was one of the reviews.
The one you read last time, I believe.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, like I knew she listened, but I didn't know she listened.
But you didn't know
she was
that was her.
Yeah, it was her, or that she listened enough that she felt that she should give us a review. So I thanked her, and I said, "Oh, I told Fran that it was you,
awesome.
And whatever, and thanked her for listening and for leaving the review." But that made me smile and happy in a week when, like I said, I don't even know which way's up. Like, all I've done is work and eat and sleep, barely eat and sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's funny awesome. Because we don't know, like, we joke about it and we're like, I don't even know if anybody listens to us or whatever. And then we get these reviews, and honestly, like, people don't understand how much they mean to us. You know, just to hear from people that are listening to us and like sharing this time, like, we're privileged that people sit and listen to us babble and talk a bunch of nonsense for an hour. We recognize it's a privilege to take your time. So thank you. Thank you for the review. That's awesome, Carrie. I had no idea. So isn't that funny? You're reading it and it's like a friend of yours. Mm-hmm. And you didn't know.
Nope, didn't know.
That's cool.
What's your pixie dust? What was your pixie dust this week?
My pixie dust this week is that on our travel day, so one of the things that made my travel day was so long, was the way the expo fell was right before my sister's birthday. And it's actually a very big birthday for my sister. I'm not going to say how old, but it's, you know, one of those ones that ends in O. It's a big milestone. And my sister Becky, so the one, actually, you all know that I've shared before that Becky was sick last year, and so quite frankly, she just kept saying, I'm just so happy to have a birthday and to be here for my birthday. So on the Monday, we flew home, and I got home, opened my suitcase, and took out all the stuff that I had bought her from the expo and went straight to her house. And of course, because of COVID and everything, I was very careful to stand, you know, a good 10 feet away from her. So I never hugged her.
You wore 3 masks. She stood 10 feet away.
I doused in all the stuff, but I got to have birthday cake with her and sing to her with my family. So our other sister, Carol, was there, and John, and of course her son, Andrew. And so we got to sing her happy birthday and celebrate with her. And it was pretty awesome.
Did she like her stuff?
She did. She loved her stuff.
You spoiled her. You got her a lot of fun things. So
I did.
But so she deserves it.
Yeah. And
you didn't. I don't even know how much you bought for yourself. We didn't.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, I got a couple T-shirts because come on,
come on,
come on, and I got a mug, of course. Which, by the way, like, I'm done with mugs. So.
Oh my goodness.
No. Like, you don't understand. Our friend Dustin's in Florida right now, and he keeps sending me pictures. And then he sent me a picture of like a wall of mugs, and he's like, do you have all of these? And I was like, seriously, stop. Don't bring me a mug, because I literally, like, my kitchen is just mugs now. Like, it's just mugs. There's no room for anything else. I gotta stop. So I bought my very last mug in Disneyland.
Very last mug, folks. You heard it here.
Yeah, I gotta stop. But yeah, so that was my pixie dust. Becky's birthday. Awesome. I made it for cake. We weren't sure because we were waiting forever for our luggage. It was kind of one of those.
Talk about that.
And the lineup for the cabs, honest to goodness, like normally I'm like, bing, just get outside, jump in a cab, I'm home. Oh no. There was a massive lineup for the taxis and the limos. Both had a big line, but the limo line was much shorter than the taxis, which is kind of funny because I think to my house, the flat rate limo is actually cheaper than a taxi. So I got in the limo line. Anyway, I made it home in time for cake, so that's all that matters. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. All right, so Carrie, this week, I'm going to edit this. I'm going to get it posted on time, and we're going to get back in the groove and back in the swing of things and hopefully not be so scattered for next week's episode.
Awesome. We got it.
And if you feel like it, share the podcast with somebody else that just needs to waste an hour of their day listening to us babble. Right?
You got it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Pixie Dust Fan Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast player so you'll get a new episode every week. And find us on social media too. We'd love to hear from you.
Till next time, remember, you are never too old to be young. Chase your dreams and design your own happily ever after.